Mr. Moderator, I move Article 27 as printed.
As printed, this was held by Ms. Murphy. We're going to do a presentation on the article with the chief, and then Ms. Murphy will make her counter presentation.
Good evening. Edward Dunn, Precinct 8, Chief of Police. We have a short presentation that Lieutenant DaCosta will be doing. We brought this bylaw, just real quick, we brought this bylaw to the town meeting. It's a model policy that we were looking at relation to communities around us who have enacted this. And by enacting this here, this will allow us to properly vet people who come to us for licenses. So I want to have the lieutenant go through the PowerPoint for you.
Thank you, Chief. I'm Lieutenant Douglas DaCosta with the Falmouth Police Department. Okay, just to quickly summarize our fingerprint-based background checks, the proposed bylaw, it's a model policy that ensures that those individuals who apply for certain licenses, and I'll go over those licenses, from the town to serve, interact with the public are fully and properly vetted in advance through a national fingerprint-based system and present no documentable safety or security risk to the Falmouth citizens, both adults and children. That's all of you and our visitors also, as you see which license it applies to. So we've been authorized to do this 2012. The state authorized us to go to our legislative body and ask you to put this bylaw into effect. So the purpose, as we've discussed, to conduct a local, state, and national, because we have not been doing national, and fingerprint-based. Right now we do it in name and date of birth, so your fingerprints are much better. And this will determine the suitability of an applicant for a license. All right, so which licenses apply? The alcohol beverage license, the manager, so one person there, hawker and peddler, so anyone hawker and peddling. So if we have 100 hawkers, each one of them would have to go through it because that individual is actually in operation. A solicitor, so somebody coming door to door, that person. So if we have 100 of those, they would have to come in. Operator of a public conveyance, this is your taxi and livery. We'd also ask those folks to come in. The dealer of secondhand articles, one person, that's the dealer. So a question came up on thrift shops. No, the dealer, just one person. We hope that the thrift shops are doing some type of background check on their own. I know a few of them are. We're interested in just the dealer. And that applies to your secondhand, junk, cars, pawn dealers, etc. The final one is already in operation, required by law, and that's the ice cream truck vendor. So the pros of the new bylaw, obviously it will increase safety for the citizens and visitors, expand the applicant background check from a local and state level to a national level. Again, we are only doing a state level check right now. So that'll include a Massachusetts criminal records check and as well as an FBI national criminal records check. It'll increase the limited criminal records look back. So right now, for example, a taxi operator, we're only going back 5 years. So we'd like to take a look at the rest of that. It'll determine suitability, as we've stated before, and we'd like to reflect upon the other municipalities that are operating. In our area, Barnstable, Yarmouth, Dennis, Harwich, Brewster, and Plymouth have similar programs. Now the cons. There is a $30 fee, and that goes to the state because they're the ones that are going to do the fingerprint background check for us and give us the report back. So that $30 fee goes to the state. It will increase the application approval wait time. So if an applicant comes in, obviously we have to wait for the state, and it's also going to increase our processing time for the employees. Not by much because we just have to fingerprint you before we'd be running it through the database. So we're going to still look at the database, but we'll spend probably about 15 minutes, going with the applicant to have his fingerprints done. So our current bylaw, as you probably already learned, is we're doing a Massachusetts criminal records check only, name and date of birth, no fingerprints. Massachusetts does not have a fingerprint system, and there's no limit on the look back. So I'd like to also give you an example. If someone comes in with a name and date of birth, it could be fake. We may not know, depending on the documents they have. If they're coming from another state, if we're doing only a Massachusetts check right now, and they do, let's say, a violent crime or even a fraud crime, we'll say in Illinois, we may not know about it. This new bylaw will help us with that. So I've pretty much gone over that. We're going to do these checks as proposed by the bylaw to ensure the safety. All right. Now, with these different licensing, the police department doesn't handle all these licensing. So if we did in fact do a fingerprint background check, we'll say on a licensee for a liquor license, that would go to the board and we would be able to give them a report so that they could determine the suitability and they could deny or approve on the report that they see. And that's it.
Okay, Ms. Murphy.
Is this on?
So this is forward, this is back.
Okay, and how do I start my stuff? Okay, thank you, Peter. My name is Carol Murphy. I'm from Precinct 9. I ask Article 27 to be brought back to town meeting in November because this article cannot be presented legally tonight with a fee attached. Oops. The police chief and selectmen cannot set fees for an article until the article has passed and a separate hearing be held on such fee. Therefore, Chief Dunn's article presented is null and void because it includes a fee. Chief Dunn does not have the authority to determine and set his own fees for the town. I would ask that Chief Dunn reconsider his bylaw and resubmit correctly as suggested above in November with no fee attached. Perhaps by doing this, it would show he is at least professional, and if not professional, at least courteous. Please, would you call order? Let me finish.
Yeah, I want a point of order. Mr. Duffy, is it illegal to set a fee in a general bylaw approved by a legislative body? Okay, not that he's aware of. So where do you make this accusation?
What,
You say it's illegal. Under what law is it illegal? Because your lawyer and your moderator
I believe
don't
that
know
they
the
had
law.
to be set. I believe they have to have a hearing before the fee can be set.
On a schedule.
On a town.
You're going to let me speak now, or you're not going to speak anymore tonight.
Excuse me?
The fee schedule for a hearing is when the bylaw says that the fee shall be established by the Board of Selectmen. Then they have to have that hearing annually. This is a general bylaw that is being proposed to be set in statute or the Code of Falmouth by the legislative body to include a specific fee, which would be set by the legislative body, not by the executive body. That's the difference. You're right on a fee schedule that has to have a hearing. This is coming to town meeting as a general bylaw with a fee in it, so it's not illegal.
Okay, I did.
We make the laws. We're the legislature.
That's fine. May I continue?
You,
Slide down.
yeah, we'll go to the next slide. Go ahead.
Bylaw with narrow selective targets instead of all employees in the town of Falmouth demonstrates the disregard for small business and nonprofits, and sadly an ice cream vendor who has only 6 weeks in the summer to make money. This is my letter to Chief Dunn, my email. Dear Chief Dunn, I'm Carol Murphy, Falmouth Town Meeting member from Precinct 9. I attended my precinct meeting last night and was quite alarmed at Article 27, Article 9, requiring full sets of fingerprints from every dealer of secondhand articles et al. And charging a $100 as a fee. Nowhere in this proposed article of yours does it mention what happens to those who already have a full set of fingerprints on file via federal arms ID card or military service. Are those business owners still charged the $100 fee? Years ago, we secondhand dealers met with then Chief Riello, who had a much kinder approach to introduce town bylaws. Why couldn't you have asked us all to meet with you in the meeting room at the police station before launching this insulting bylaw? This bylaw does not improve police relations with the small business retail community. Please respond at your earliest convenience, as this is an unreasonable measure by you and shows your disdain for the small business given the amount of excessive financial burdens we currently face. I'm certain in keeping with the Falmouth Service Center, Brenda Swain's set of fingerprints in your database goes far to protecting Falmouth citizens. Sincerely, Carol Ann Murphy, Bittersweet Road, East Falmouth, Precinct 9 Town Meeting Member. Chief Dunn's response. Dear Carol Murphy, first let me say the Falmouth Police Department is not against small businesses. This bylaw that is being proposed would help protect citizens of the business owners and citizens of Falmouth. Article 27 is being presented to town meeting as a model policy that is currently being used by several communities around us. That being said, I'm just presenting the model policy at town meeting. Of course, it will be up to town meeting to decide on whether to move forward or not with a proposed bylaw on fingerprinting to ensure the safety of the community. I plan on having a presentation at town meeting and welcome a discussion on this subject. I look forward to speaking with further on the article. Thank you, Chief Dunn. These are the secondhand dealers. There are only 12 of us. Among those is the Falmouth Service Center with Brenda Swain as the license holder, and the St. Vincent de Paul Society with Mary Ann Wagan as the license holder. This is an article from the Cape Cod Times dated January 23rd, 2018. This is an excerpt from the article. Some Barnstable towns haven't considered adopting these bylaws. It hasn't been brought up. Wellfleet Police Chief Ronald Fitzat said, Bourne hasn't adopted the provisions, and I see no desire to do so at this time, said the town's police chief, Dennis Woodside. According to the minutes of the March 29th, 2016 meeting of the Truro Selectmen, an article for the fingerprint-based background had been put on the draft warrant, but the board unanimously voted to remove it. An official with the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts called a bylaw requiring fingerprint-based checks for certain vendors a bad idea. The FBI database is notoriously inaccurate, and in some cases databases are inconclusive, which would give cities a false sense of security, said Kate Crockford, Director of Technology for the ACLU Liberty Project. Regarding privacy, Crockford said the FBI says it keeps different databases for civil and criminal, but an important data privacy principle is that this information collected for one purpose shouldn't be used for another. Dunn disagreed that privacy issues should trump the public safety. Protecting the public, I don't think anything is too much. Amendment to Article 27. Amendment to Article 27 to include category of all town employees, elected and non-elected, to submit to fingerprinting by the Falmouth Police Department. Any employee of the town engaging in occupational activities within the town shall submit to a full set of fingerprints taken within 10 days of the date of application for employment for the purpose of conducting a state and national criminal background check to determine the suitability of the applicant for the position. Fingerprint-based checks using the same bylaws, same laws of procedure required under Mass General Law, Chapter 6, subsection 172B and 1/2. Adding this amendment bears a rational relationship to the stated goal below. This action ensures that those individuals who apply for positions with the town of Falmouth to serve and interact with the public are fully and properly vetted in advance through a national fingerprint-based system and present no documentable safety or security risk to Falmouth citizens, both adults and children. DPW workers have extensive contact with our citizens, both adults and children.
No, she's got time. She's at 7:40. Do you have the amendment in writing for the clerk?
I have one more thing to
Okay,
add
but
to
do
it.
you have the amendment for the clerk?
Excuse me?
Do you have the amendment
Do I have
for
it?
the
Yes,
clerk?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. You're still on the clock.
Chapter 459 of the Acts of 2012, civil fingerprinting for educators and other individuals working with and around children. If a city or town were to draft an ordinance allowing local police to fingerprint school employees and others under Chapter 459, the FBI would not accept the fingerprint submissions because the statute for fingerprinting school employees does not allow for fingerprint-based checks using the same laws as procedures required under MGL C6 S 172B and 1/2. All Falmouth school employees are fingerprinted, but their fingerprints are not in the FBI database, the same way Chief Dunn's Article 27 amendment would require asking all town employees to be fingerprinted under MGL C6 S 172B and 1/2.
Okay. Mr. Dufresne? Can we have a motion to extend beyond 11 o'clock? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. For real? Can we cue a slide? We're going to do a slide here. All those in favor of exceeding past 11 o'clock to finish up this article will vote 1A or 2 no. We'll get there when we get there. To exceed past 11, 1A, 2 no. It's majority vote. Ms. Murphy. By a kind of vote of 130 in favor and 55 opposed, we're going to exceed past 11 o'clock. 130 to 55. We are asking the petitioner to give us a placement of where this language would go in the bylaw, because this is a bylaw, so it's not just a motion. Okay, so the language, can we get the slide up? PowerPoint folks, can we get the PowerPoint guys? Can we get the slide up with that motion, just the motion slide? Yeah.
Nick Lowell, Precinct 5. I question whether this amendment is within the scope of the article. Could I get a clarification
Yeah,
on that?
it is, because it's just adding applicants that are necessary for fingerprints by the police department. So, and so she's recommending that the language goes in the second, or actually it's the third, well, no, it's the second section, 156-15.2, applicants
I don't have
submission
the
to
article.
fingerprinting by the Falmouth Police Department. So that's where we'll look at. Okay, discussion on the amendment. Yep. No, she's adding this to, so it would be the 5 folks there, or 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5 folks there, and then this. Yeah. Okay, so any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Lowell?
Nick Lowell, Precinct 5. I call the question on the amendment.
Okay. There's a motion to close discussion on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it by a 2/3. The question will come on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. It's the opinion of the chair that the noes have it by a majority, and we're back to the Article 27 as printed. Further discussion, Mr. Latimer. I'll add you to the list. Mr. Latimer's on the list. Yep, Ms. Swain, you're on the list. Putnam's on the list.
Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. I have a few issues with this. First of all, dealers in second-hand goods. I suppose that means somebody that applies for a license. But we have thrift shops here, and I'm wondering to what extent, you know, the thrift shop at my church.
Yeah, okay, we're going to answer that question real quick. Mr. Duffy?
We have a bylaw that regulates secondhand dealers and secondhand collectors. It was passed a number of years ago. Chief Dunn referred to it, I think, as during Chief Riolo's tenure. It has a definition of secondhand dealers, and they are people who deal in the following property: precious metals, precious gems, watches and jewelry, electronics, audio and video devices, power tools and equipment, musical instruments, sporting goods, bicycles, boats, planes, motorcycles, art, coins, currency, and antiques. If the thrift shop is not dealing in any of those items, this bylaw doesn't apply to them.
Well, the thrift shop at our church just might have somebody's secondhand bicycle for sale, for example. So that means the church ladies that work there are going to have to be fingerprinted.
Apparently, it would mean that, yes.
Okay, that's one problem I have. I have another problem here. Exactly what constitutes a documentable security or safety risk? And I raise that question because a few years back I had the privilege of representing some upstanding Falmouth citizens who were arrested and convicted for criminal trespass while they were protesting the operation of the nuclear plant up there at Pilgrim. They were convicted. The judge recognized the seriousness of that offense by sentencing them all to 1 day in the House of Correction deemed served. But that was a conviction, and they were fingerprinted when they were arrested. So my question is, would that constitute a documentable security or safety risk, according to the Falmouth Police Department?
Currently, the bylaw states certain crimes that we can look at, and anything that would be unsuitable would be in the violent crime area, sex offenders, and so forth. And if you're looking at someone that had a license, in your particular case, you're referring to secondhand, if they had fraud, theft, and so forth, we would take an eye on upon that and then make a decision on whether it'd be appropriate for us to approve or not approve their license.
What about criminal trespass, and what about disorderly conduct?
Those wouldn't count.
They won't be.
No. They don't have anything to do with running a business.
The final thing that bothers me about this, I appreciate the fact that it says this information will be used only to determine the suitability of the person for the position in question. However, something just bothers me about this, that this isn't maybe a way of getting information to the FBI or the criminal justice system about people who may be undocumented aliens who may have just done something innocuous like trespass or something like that, whose fingerprints are on file, and now, even though the town isn't using that information for any type of purpose related to deportation, certainly that gives a red flag to the FBI or then perhaps to Homeland Security and leads to that kind of thing. And it just bothers me. It's just something that I don't think the town needs to do, and I think that's a risk that I would think many people in this town would agree with the principle of security or sanctuary for non-criminal aliens, but now these people might be identified to the FBI just simply for having applied for a license. Just a concern. Thank you.
Okay. The gentleman in the far back left. Yeah. Mr. Thrasher, you're on the list.
Dick Sacchetti, Precinct 4. I have two questions. One, I realize this is dealing with people who are dealing with the public.
Just got to get a little
I got to
closer.
bring it closer. Okay. When someone gets a gun license, do they get fingerprinted when the Falmouth Police Department issues that license?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Matter of fact, we're going to be using the same database.
Okay. The second question I have is, and this relates to Mr. Lattimore, I'm a little uncomfortable with your answer regarding what constitutes a person not being upstanding enough to get the license. Criminal trespass, you said, wouldn't be a problem. But what if the criminal trespass was going on to the White House lawn? I mean, it seems as though you're allowing the determination of the results that you get without having known all the background of what the issue was that the person got arrested for, which may have been frivolous, but that could prevent them from getting a license based on what you feel the severity of the crime was. How would you handle that?
We do the same thing with firearms licensing. We look at the overall package, just as you've given an example, and folks are also allowed to sort of appeal with us, and they also have a right of appeal later. In this particular case, you're framing it around a criminal trespass. If it's just a criminal trespass of someone's yard, or you're talking about a White House, there is a difference.
Okay,
and
so
this is where we're allowed to look at the broad picture.
Okay, so you get all the information about the adjudication of whatever the crime was.
That's correct. And if the hit does not show any type of conclusion or disposition, we wouldn't use it, or we would look further. If it says murder, we would probably look further.
Well,
Good idea.
Well, yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Swain?
Hi, Brenda Swain, Precinct 6, and the Director of Falmouth Service Center and the Emerald House Thrift Shop, for which we hold a junk dealer's license, as Carol Murphy showed on the screen. If Chief Dunn thinks it's a good idea for fingerprinting to occur in this manner, then you can take my fingerprints. I think that there are reasons why this is being presented to us, and we should trust the Chief and his department to do their business.
Mr. Thrasher? Folks, let's go. Let's go. Mr. Thrasher?
Scott Thrasher, Precinct 4. I didn't see it in the warrant booklet, but did I see on the slide presentation it said door-to-door sales?
Yes, the solicitors, most folks would probably like those to be vetted.
So I hope I'm not reading into this like Boy Scouts selling popcorn door-to-door with parents.
No, there's a provision in the law that doesn't apply to those certain things.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Williams?
Cheryl Williams, Precinct 3. Just to add on to what Scott just mentioned, I did have a question about that. Solicitors are included because in the summertime, I know in the past, we have had problems in this town and in surrounding communities whereby a clearinghouse in the middle part of the country will bring young people, some of them very troubled, to the town. So are all of those people going to be included in this? And would it be $100 per individual?
Yes. The point there is, and we see a lot of folks come in, you'll see the Christmas parade and so forth, or the fireworks. You'll see people come in from other states, particularly Rhode Island. Right now, we're not even checking them in Rhode Island.
Yeah, but
it comes up nothing in Massachusetts.
But specifically what I'm talking about in the summertime, oftentimes young people are brought in by the van loads, they're put up in local hotels, and then they're dropped off into a given neighborhood, and they go door to door.
That's correct. They would
so
be included.
they would be included?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see what I have here. Ms. Murphy? Ms. Murphy? With the mic, please.
May I have an answer to my question as to those people who already have their fingerprints on file with the FBI and federal firearms ID card? Are they still being subjected to this fee and this process?
Yes. what will happen is just like a renewal of a firearms license, the first time you go in for a firearms license, just like this license, you will have your fingerprints taken. When you come back for your renewal, we won't have to take your fingerprints again, but we must ask the state to look at the database. The $30 is going to the state. It's not going to us. We're using their database.
The other $70 is going into the police department for administration, is my understanding.
That would be up to the board to make that determination. We have different fees.
I'm sorry, but it says so in the article, I think. There's wording in the article to that effect. And I just wanted to ask, if there is a current license holder who has their fingerprints on file with the FBI and a firearms ID, are they still going to have to pay that $100 fee and submit their fingerprints?
I believe I've answered that question, yes.
So current holders who have their fingerprints on file, I just want to understand this. Okay.
Yes.
They are still going to submit to their fingerprinting and pay the $100 fee. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Mace?
Rose Mace, Precinct 3. I never speak, so I'm really nervous. My question, I have a couple questions. One of them is, who's here in town now, like the secondhand dealers? Is there any way that they can just be grandfathered in and it's people coming in, or no? Like, would you still have to take her fingerprints?
It would be current and future. So when you come up for renewal, even if you've had a secondhand dealer's license for 10 years, or if you've just opened your shop up, you will be subject to this bylaw.
So my second thing is the secondhand dealers. That was when, like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when I was first introduced to all this, I remember the secondhand dealer bylaw. I was actually at the meeting that created that whole bylaw was because out in West Falmouth and East Falmouth, everybody's cars were getting broken into, and they wanted to do something about this. So because people's cars and homes were being broken into, they, reacted to that and made this bylaw. Now we're all saying, well, we don't want to do this, but they want us to do this to be proactive instead of waiting for something to happen, which is the reason why we have a secondhand dealer's bylaw in the first place. And my third thing is that previously in the last few articles, we just all voted to allow Chief Dunn to go beyond his 65-year retirement, or to allow Mr. Suso to make that determination, because we believe that what he does is right, and we believe that he has the best interest of the town. But now we're going to sit here and say, we don't really think that, though. So we're, in a way, contradicting what we just did if we vote this down. So that's
Okay.
all you're going to hear from me for tonight.
Okay, Mr. Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brent Putnam, Precinct 9. I was actually in favor of Ms. Murphy's amendment because I was looking forward to the idea of fingerprinting politicians. I think that's probably something that's long overdue. And that said, could the chief or the lieutenant please answer how many licensees have slipped through the cracks? We're presumably passing this because we've had some problems with background checks that we're trying to fix.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to give you a number, but I like the example better of stating that if you run a Massachusetts check, like the example of the solicitor today on going door to door, I know for a fact they come in from Rhode Island. They'd have a Rhode Island address, everything. I look, they don't have a Massachusetts license. They don't have a Massachusetts background. Do they have a criminal background? We don't know because we're not allowed to go further. But we know they've just come in from Rhode Island with all Rhode Island documentation. So that is what is predictable is being slipped through the cracks. Whether they all 100% would be fine, I I wouldn't be able to tell you either way. I can't give you a number of who has slipped through the cracks, but I can use that example to show you that someone may.
And I appreciate where you're coming with that, but I guess I have a problem from this from a civil liberties perspective, because this sounds more like a solution in search of a problem. If we don't know how many people are really slipping through the cracks, are we just creating more paperwork and subjecting people to more background checks unnecessarily, is my concern. We have to give some thought, folks, to the concept of liberty in general. And it might be a little difficult because, of course, you know, there's a good example up here, ice cream trucks. They deal with kids all the time. We obviously don't want to have pedophiles coming from other parts of the country and operating an ice cream truck in Falmouth. Very reasonable. But on the other hand, when we're starting to fingerprint everybody for everything that we're doing, we have to ask ourselves, have we gone too far? And this is maybe not too far this time, but then what's next? What's the next step? It's real easy to say this sounds reasonable now, but are we really willing to take that first step and then go down the road another step a little bit later? The secondhand dealers bylaw is being mentioned. Well, that was the first step. Now we're going to start fingerprinting people. Ms. Murphy suggested we expand it to all town employees, and that sounds like a really good idea, but is it going a step too far? I really think we should have some more public discussion about this. I think Ms. Murphy had the right idea in that there should be some more vetting about this bylaw before we really start going down this road. I'm really uncomfortable with this. Thank you.
Mr. Donahue? And then in the aisle, yep.
Bob Donahue, Precinct 3. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to ask, could we, would the police department be willing to exempt churches and church-related organizations from the $100 fee?
And I have discussed this, and he's the boss, and we don't mind. You're the legislative body. We've presented you with a model policy. If you wish to amend it, that's up to you, sir.
And I would like to amend this, Mr. Moderator. Well, think about it. It's all our churches that have thrift shops, sales, all that stuff is going to fall into this. So we should exempt them from the $100 charge. Some organizations, $100 is a lot of money. So
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not writing your amendment tonight, so if you have it in writing, you can submit it to the clerk.
Okay.
I'm not going there tonight.
All right.
You got to do your homework before you get here. Okay, the lady in the aisle over here. I saw a hand somewhere. I don't know where it is. Yeah, sorry.
Sarah Long, Precinct 7. I just want to make sure we understand that whether you like this or not, it should not be viewed as a referendum on Chief Dunn. You know, I have sort of a problem with this law for a variety, or this proposal for a variety of reasons, but I don't feel that if I vote no, that I'm somehow saying, well, my vote yes for Police Dunn before is contradicted. It isn't. We're here to vote. If you like something and it's been proposed by our leaders or the other bodies, you listen, you debate, you vote for it. You don't like it, you vote against it. We don't rubber stamp here. So I just felt like it was becoming very personal, and I don't think it should be. You know, my concerns with this law overlap with what Mr. Putnam said somewhat. I think it kind of goes too far. I have a general concern that we're trying to protect ourselves from everything, and where does it stop? But that's just a personal opinion. Chief Dunn, I respect what you propose, and this is not about you.
Mr. Swain. With a microphone, please.
Charlie Swain from Precinct 1, who was saying that solicitor from Rhode Island, whom we don't have fingerprints on, is a gun dealer, you don't know. And this is what this bylaw would take care of. Anyway, I move the question, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. You know my rule, though. You can't speak and then move the question. So, okay, Mr. Haddad.
David Haddad, Precinct 9. I'd like to move the question, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, that's the way you do it. Where were you an hour ago? No, the question will come on moving the previous question. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. It's been shown that the ayes have it by a 2/3 majority, and the question has been called. The question now comes on the main motion. This is Article 27 as printed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. All those in favor will bring the slide up. All those in favor will press 1A. All those opposed will press 2B. It's a general bylaw. It's just a majority vote. All those in favor of adoption of the bylaw signify by pressing 1A. All those opposed, 2B. Okay, by a kind of vote of 120 in favor and 62 opposed, the article passes, and this meeting will stand adjourned until 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Falmouth Community Television's coverage of town meeting is sponsored by the following corporate underwriters: